I'm a princess who can't play a note, can't win at chess, and can't paint or do calligraphy to save my life. Shen Yao's personal guard, Shinde, told me so himself. Embarrassed, he scratched his head, shot a guilty look at my maid Xiaolan, and, for the 53rd time, blocked me outside Shen Yao's residence. But the ever-impartial Shinde never had much nerve that he fidgeted, trying to hide something behind his back. Sure enough, Xiaolan snatched away the food box he was trying to conceal. Pitiful and hopelessly smitten, Shinde gazed at her, then at the box in her hands, looking close to tears, watching them. I couldn't help sighing inwardly. 3 years, I've been chasing Shen Yao for 3 whole years. Long before I made any headway with him, Xiaolan and Shinde managed to fall for each other thanks to my endless stakeouts. And still, Shen Yao doesn't like me. Truth be told, he barely even acknowledges me. So, I went to ask Shinde that he is Han, the Han man who knows Shen Yao best, and a Han who is hopelessly in love with Xiaolan. Surely he would know where I was going wrong. And that's how I got my answer. Sure, I can't do any of that, but I can dance the trickiest dances, sing the loveliest songs, play the most stirring billy, and tame the wildest horses that I figured a straight swap would work, right? Music, chess, calligraphy, painting, set them against dance, song, melody, horsemanship. There, a perfect match. But Shinde just flushed red and stammered out, "Princess, let it be. The general truly does not like you." Before he could finish the last word, an angry Xiaolan shoved the food box into the hands of a young guard at the gate, grabbed my wrist, and marched off. That I turned my head and caught a glimpse of Shinde. The tall, rugged man from the Central Plains was watching our retreating backs with an utterly forlorn expression, his arms wrapped tightly around the food box he had just snatched back from the guard. But I did feel a bit sorry for him. I'd gotten him into yet another fight with Xiaolan. 2. My name is Long Anisha, and I am the Princess of Yinchi. Father says I am the Pearl of Yinchi, the most dazzling ruby in all the western regions. Mother hands me a slice of honeydew melon, smiling gently, and calls me the loveliest wild rose in the oasis, the most vivid safflower in Yanchi No1. She says, could ever dislike her dearest Anisha that I miss them terribly. But Yinchi is 800 li from the seat of the Yanchi Protectorate. Every time Alan and I come, we have to ride camels for over half a month. That I hadn't even seen Shen Yao yet on this trip. And I couldn't bear to turn around and go home just like that. That I sprawled listlessly by the window of the courier inn, staring at the distant moon. The first time I saw Shen Yao was on a moonlit night, just as bright as this one. That I had just turned 16, and my eldest sister came rushing back from Kucha, declaring she was going to give me the most unforgettable birthday ever. So, she rounded up second sister, third brother, fifth brother, and me, and we set off on a grand, boisterous caravan from Yinchi, drifting right into the borders of the Great Tang. That if she hadn't spotted some Kuchan spies while we were shopping and hurriedly dragged us into hiding, before secretly rerouting us to the next destination, I might have been so overwhelmed by her sisterly love that I'd have wept with gratitude. Once she realized she couldn't hide it anymore, she grinned slyly and confessed she had had a massive fight with the first prince of Kucha, my brother-in-law, and in a fit of fury, she'd stormed off. Little 4. Actually, the fight with him was just a side benefit. Your big sister's main goal was to celebrate your birthday. I tugged at the corner of my mouth to show I was not buying a word of it. She added that those Kuchan spies were all there to search for her. This part one believed. After all, what fool would barge into the Great Tang to gather intelligence? How much peace and quiet did they think they'd enjoy? Oh, except for the ferocious Turks. But oh, the Great Tang was such fun. So many curious novelties, so many delicious dishes, so many tricks I'd never seen before. We were all a bunch of bumpkins who had never seen the world. Generously, we told our eldest sister that for the sake of family, we'd let her off. Only she was far too wicked for not bringing us to the Tangs sooner. And this time we were going to play to our heart's content before going back. We were far too young then to understand the depth of feeling hidden in her hesitant, wistful eyes. The consequence of failing to read that look was that within a few days, invoice sent by father and my brother-in-law arrived, along with a guard unit from the Anchi Protectorate, and we were all hauled back. It was then that I saw Shen Yao, clad in silver armor, a long sword hanging from his lean, taut waist, his skin slightly dark from years of exposure to sun and wind. He rode with awe-inspiring authority on a russet horse, leading a team of well-trained guards as he galloped towards us. He was the most handsome young man I had ever seen, save for lacking a bit of bulk. Everything about him was perfect, so perfect that when third brother and fifth brother tried to pull me along to run, I smacked their hands away with a crack. So to this day, fifth brother, who still loves causing chaos at every turn, will drone on about how the moment he recalled the force of that slap, he decided our eldest sister could only be ranked the second most detestable, the title of first-place villain. He would have to concede to me. Yes, I nearly forgot. It was our eldest sister who secretly tipped father off about our location. Though she kept a straight face and claimed she was afraid father and mother would worry, we all unanimously agreed she missed her husband. The next day, saying goodbye to us, she was in such a rush that she skipped right over fifth brother, who was waiting in line with open arms for a hug. Fifth brother stood there frozen, arms still raised, as he watched her whip her horse and vanish into the distance in a cloud of dust. Gone without a trace, as for the Kuchin envoy who couldn't even outrun her and ended up 2 or 3 days behind. Well, we heard that story later from our little nephew. In any case, that reckless escapade was how I got to know Shen Yao. I suppose father sent urgent dispatches to both the Khan of Heaven and the Anchi Protectorate, which was how Shen Yao and his men found us so quickly and escorted us back to Yinchi. Even though father severely punished the lot of us afterwards, I didn't feel the slightest bit of regret, because thinking of him makes me think of the cheese cherries we ate in Suzhou, so sweet, so fragrant. 3. I have done a great many things in my pursuit of Shen Yao. Forget it. Not a single one has ever succeeded. Anyway, father has never been very happy about my chasing Shen Yao. He always says the single greatest regret of his life was listening to the sweet talk of my eldest brother-in-law and marrying off his beloved firstborn to somewhere so impossibly far away. I glanced at the map hanging on the palace wall and, ever so smoothly, shuffled over and used my clever head to cover up Chang'an, Shen Yao's hometown. Mother, on the other hand, was quite supportive at first. She said she'd never seen such a dashing young man in Yinchi, and after thinking it over, added that she hadn't seen one anywhere in the entire western regions either. But when I'd spent my first 2 years getting absolutely nowhere, mother started insisting that I go on arranged matchmaking. Dates. Ugh. Just thinking about it annoys me. Lately, mother's been ignoring me again because I once again stood up the man she had painstakingly introduced to me. I've heard that girls in the Great Tang usually marry around 15 or 16, though in the western regions we actually tend to do so even earlier. In the past, my parents doted on us sisters and were content to let us daughters stay by their sides a couple of years longer. But still being unwed at 19 was truly far too late. So how in the world do I make Shen Yao like me and have his babies? Just as I was deep in contemplation of this question, I heard a bizarre, rhythmic barking sound outside the window. It was the secret code Shen Day uses to call Xiaolan out to meet him. I just don't get it. Is it really so hard to simply knock on the door? It's not like I'd hold anyone hostage and stop you two from going on a date. Xiaolan was still sulking over what happened that afternoon, sitting there fuming and refusing to move. I went over and nudged her until she reluctantly got up and went outside. I perched myself by the window again and watched Shen Yao, dressed all flashy and colorful, coaxing and pulling at Xiaolan with a silly grin. After quite a tussle, he finally managed to lead her away. He seemed to be in a great mood, striding proudly, like a gaudily colored rooster. So sweet. I want to be in love too. Xiaolan is a Han name, but her real name is Langkima. Shen Yao made a special trip to ask their chief clerk, who came up with the name. He even got his hands on a painting of an orchid and showed her, saying, "This is an orchid, noble, pure, and elegant, the finest flower in the heart of every Han." Xiaolan hugged the painting, moved to tears, and declared that from then on she would never again be called Langkima. She was Xiaolan, a beautiful flower of the Central Plains. I think it's rather nice too. The person who gave her her old name was, after all, a lecherous old creep who preyed on little girls. Better to be rid of it. And now I'm jealous again. I want a Han name too. But Shen Yao says a Han man only gives names to his own wife. So I have no choice but to go find Shen Yao. Once I finally cornered Shen Yao at the protectorate, I had barely stated my intent when he shoved me off onto a little mustachioed man at his side and strode off without a backward glance. The mustachioed fellow was quite polite and asked me gently what name I wanted. Did he want me to be his wife or something? How could that be? And so, very impolitely, I abandoned him and fled. I don't know when Xiaolan would be back. Being so close, young couples who haven't seen each other for too long tend to dawdle. I simply decided to sleep first. When I woke, I saw a bunch of fresh flowers on the windowsill, with a note attached that read, "For Xiaolan." Thanks to Shen Yao, I had gritted my teeth and spent 2.5 years studying Chinese writing just to chase him. I could now read most everyday characters. Her dark circles were more pronounced than ever, but Xiaolan didn't look tired at all. As she gathered up the flowers with delight, she told me that in 2 months' time, Shen Yao would be in charge of escorting the Western region envoys on their tribute mission to Chang'an. I was instantly overcome with joy. I dragged Xiaolan, still lost in the fragrance of her blossoms, and bolted straight for the stables. I had to go back and see father and beg him to allow me to go to Chang'an. Once I was there, Shen Yao would have no way to avoid me. We'd be bound to bump into each other. The road would be that long and that dull. Surely something would happen. How else could we endure the solitude of such a journey? For, beaming, I looked at a rather displeased Shen Yao and stuffed my favorite little white jade rabbit into his arms. I had already observed things carefully when we set out. The kingdoms of Khotan, Kashgar, and Suyab had all sent along princes and princesses. Among them were 2 younger princesses whose eyes lit up the moment they saw Shen Yao. I have to admit, they were truly beautiful. Beautiful or not, I saw Shen Yao first. They'd have to line up behind me. But watching the wolfish hunger in their gazes as they stared at him, I instantly decided, strike first to seize the prize. Shen Yao's knife-sharp brows furrowed slightly. He wanted to press the little jade rabbit back on me. But he was no match for my cleverness. I instantly sprang 3 feet away, clearing my throat. I puffed out my chest and declared loudly, "This is my favorite little rabbit, and I'm giving it to my favorite General Shen." Shen Yao's face immediately darkened, but he didn't try to give it back. Mainly because the only way to return it would be to throw it, if it hit me. In front of the envoys of so many kingdoms, it would be a major diplomatic incident if he threw it on the ground. Well, a rabbit with ruby eyes, made of the finest Hitian jade, was quite expensive, and he would be loath to break it, as Shen Yao once told me. Although Shen Yao was the pampered, privileged son of a noble family, He was thrown into an army camp to be hardened from a young age, eating and living alongside ordinary soldiers. He knows that common folk scrape by and the lower ranks have it hard, and so he developed a frugal nature, a world apart from those spoiled dandies who spend their days drinking, gambling, and living in extravagance. When Shen Yao told me that back then, I secretly rejoiced to myself. Anisha, your eye for men is truly excellent. Now that I'd finally given him a gift he accepted, my excitement got the better of me. General Shen is adorable, just like a little bunny, except a bit darker, is all. Shen Yao held the tiny rabbit. His face, if possible, grew darker. No, that's not what I mean, dark is cute too. Darker is cute, and it's healthy. Next time I'll have a craftsman make a black bunny, it'll be absolutely adorable, just as adorable as General Shen. Behind me, soldiers were chuckling that I didn't quite get it. I thought I'd explained myself rather well. Shen Yao pressed his lips tight, said nothing, and shoved the rabbit into Shen Yau's hands. With Xiaolan around, Shen Yao would never dare return it to me, that if anything, he'd find a way to tuck that little rabbit into Shen Yao's pillow or hide it under his blankets. If Shen Yao slept with the white jade bunny as his pillow, wasn't that just sleeping on me? The thought nearly made me laugh out loud. Grinning, I sidled up to Shen Yao. General Shen, I want to eat with you. He didn't look at me, just turned and headed for his room. Your Highness, please know your limits. I'm not heavy at all. I feigned ignorance, and before the ever-dutiful Shen Yao could stop me, I slipped deftly inside, plopping down beside him. General, what are we having tonight? In the end, Shen Yao grabbed me by the scruff of the neck, hauled me out, and slammed the door shut with a bang. Lucky for me, the foreign envoys had all retired to their quarters. No one witnessed the fourth princess of Yinchi making a fool of herself. Well, time to go back to my rear end ached. 5. Lately, Shen Yao's been a bit uncomfortable whenever he sees me. Probably because I've been a little too aggressive in my advances. In the mornings, I'll leave a dewy bouquet outside his window or tint. I admit it. I learned this trick from Shen Yao. During midday rests, I'll ride over to his side, press some little trinket into his hand, then wheel around and gallop straight back to the Yinchi delegation night when we set up camp. I'll sneak into Shen Yao's tent while Shen Yao has his head craned at the sky or during a shift change, and squeeze in next to him for dinner. First, Shen Yao always threw me out, but eventually, with a throbbing headache, he resigned himself to letting me throw my weight around inside. No, I mean, sit beside him and eat. All right, that tactic was also Shen Yao's idea. After Xiaolan, who hated seeing my poor rear hit the ground again, gave him a thorough scolding, he came slinking over with a fawning grin and offered his advice. The general's got a thin face if he tries to toss you out. Your Highness, just yell. The louder the better. As dramatic as you can, it'll definitely work. So the next day, when Shen Yao went to throw me out again, I immediately launched into the performance Shen the advisor had so painstakingly coached me in, yelling at the top of my lungs. General Shen, you drink the milk I fed you, eat the cherries I hand-fed you, and now you're kicking me out? Heartless man, faithless lover, Chen Shimmy, boo. The tears hadn't even formed in my eyes yet, but Shen Yao looked like he was dying from internal injuries. Face red to the ears, he clamped his hand over my mouth. He froze for a second, then hastily let go, and didn't throw me out. That sight, his face flushed crimson, was just too rare, too handsome that I couldn't help myself. I kissed him. Giddy with excitement and nerves, I danced my way right out of the tent. I had this nagging feeling I was forgetting something. What was it? 6. Oh, right out, I forgot to eat. Weak with hunger, I collapsed onto the bed, Xiaolan got me some flatbread. After she'd seen me eat, she went out on her date again. Honestly, spending all day together isn't enough. They still have to date at night. Seeing as it was already past bedtime, I might as well go find Shen Yao. Maybe he'd be just as cute asleep as he was during the day. But when I slipped over to his room, I found he wasn't sleeping either. He was sitting on the roof, watching the stars. All around was still and quiet. The soldiers were on watch at the perimeter, and everyone else slumbered in dreams that, oh, this enchanting starry night, this hazy beauty, it was just perfect for romance. That thought prompted me to fetch a ladder and climb up onto the roof too. General Shen, watching the stars alone is so lonely. I'm here to keep you company. Hey, want a drink? I unhooked the wine flask at my waist and offered it to him. For the first time ever, Shen Yao didn't move away just because I'd drawn near. I could even see a blush stealing over his face again that he stared at the flask for a while before looking away, still not talking. Fine. If he won't talk, I will. So what? At first I knew I was telling some childhood embarrassments, but later on I had no clue what I was saying to be by the time I drained the last of the wine. All I wanted was to kiss his cheek again. It felt so smooth, like an egg. So nice to kiss. Shen Yao hadn't turned toward me once, but when he finally did, he asked, "Does your highness like my face? Or me as a person? What's wrong with liking both? Why was I so easily drunk tonight?" Strange. Fighting to keep my drooping eyelids open, I gazed at his handsome profile, puzzled. Your face is yours, and you are you. All of it's you. Oh, I like all of it. Then which did your highness like first? My face, or me? Your face, I answered honestly. Shen Yao seemed to smile that I really wanted to see it clearly, because he'd never once shown me a smile before, but my head was spinning, and no matter how I strained my eyes, I just couldn't make out his expression. Shen Yao, I really, really like you. Can I kiss you? I felt like I was about to pass out, so I tugged his sleeve and made my request. After all, I was a princess with principles. I wanted to kiss Shen Yao honorably, properly, and lawfully in my blurry state. Shen Yao seemed to shake off my hand. The next thing I knew, I woke up in my own room. Xiaolan looked at me worriedly and told me that she and Shun De had come by and found me lying on the roof, so they'd carried me down. That was strange. What about Shen Yao? After that, I didn't go looking for him for several days, because I'd caught a chill from that night on the roof. When I was better and went to eat with him again, he didn't throw me out anymore. But he didn't give me any good looks either, and he absolutely wouldn't let me feed him. Still, I was thrilled we were eating together already. Before long we'd be sleeping together too, right? All right. Maybe that logic was a stretch, but we had time. Eventually this ice cube Shen Yao might just melt under my warmth. Shen De was also very pleased with my progress. He taught me another trick. With a man, if you grab his stomach, you've grabbed his heart. One night, when he was removing his armor, I summoned the courage to reach out and grab Shen Yao's stomach. So, do you, feel anything in your heart? My hand still on his stomach, I asked expectantly. Shen Yao frowned, batted my hand away, warned me not to practice witchcraft and sorcery within the borders of the Great Tang, and threw me out. Right. It's all my fault for not being clearer, Shen De said, his face purple with suppressed laughter. But no matter, the general's birthday is the day after tomorrow. Your Highness, if you put on a good show, maybe you can get him to forgive you. Day after tomorrow. That's soon. Why didn't you say so earlier? Shen De scratched his head. Been so busy lately making that pressed flower album for Xiaolan. I forgot. I didn't even have time to feel jealous. I had to hurry and pick out a gift for Shen Yao. Back in my room, I rummaged through the chests I'd brought, especially my box of trinkets specially prepared for him. All that was left now were my treasured set of clay figurines, a colored silk sword tassel, a branch from a 1,000-year poplar, my favorite gem-studded belt, and a jumble of other odds and ends that I held the belt up and looked at it again and again, then steeled myself and put it back. That one. I'd save it for when he liked me back. Then I'd give him a huge surprise. I'd present myself along with it. None of it was worthy of a birthday gift I decided to go browse the market stalls in town. 7. The room was dark, the air thick with a nauseating stench. Outside, the sound of strings and pipes never stopped, mixed with crude laughter. I knew exactly where I was. A brothel, the kind that trafficked in decent women. My hands were tied behind me. Extremely uncomfortable, but more pressing was the smell. The stink came in waves, assaulting my nose and stomach. If my mouth hadn't been stuffed with a rag, I would have vomited for sure. Was there a latrine next door? That thought made me want to heave even more. Our party had just been resting in this town for a couple of days, so I called some Yinshi warriors to accompany me to the market. To pick out Shen Yao's gift, I'd planned so carefully, and yet I still got kidnapped. Those useless sacks of wine and rice. When I get back, I'll have Father dock their pay. I wondered if Xiao Wu and Xiaolan would notice I was missing and get Shen Yao to rescue me. I don't know how long I waited before someone finally pushed the door open. A few brawny serving women carried me out to a courtyard, washed and dressed me, put me in the gauzy skirt of a kucha dancer, escorted me to a lavishly decorated room, and withdrew. After another long wait, a Han man with a huge belly and dark circles under his eyes came staggering in. His rodent-like gaze latched onto me, and he wobbled unsteadily onto the seat beside me, oily with lust. Little beauty. Oh, little beauty. Sure, I'm decent looking, but I'm a princess of Yinshi. I don't do this sort of thing. I propped my chin on my hand, sizing him up with distaste. Ugh, so revolting. A princess? Even if you were a princess of the Great Tang, today you're going to serve this lord well. Come on, give your lord a kiss. He leaned in even closer. Bleg. This time I really did throw up. The pot-bellied brute seemed enraged. His face twisted as he made a grab for my collar. Before he could open his mouth to roar, I quickly jumped up and shoved the drunk's head straight into my vomit. It wasn't what I'd wanted to do. I'd planned to poison him elegantly, but that bout of puking had gone and washed out the poison I'd hidden between my back teeth. Once I'd confirmed he was out cold, I hummed a little tune and hoisted him onto the bed. When the moment seemed right, I started kicking the bed hard, making it creak rhythmically, mimicking some rather unseemly sounds. That sort of thing was no challenge for me at all. How many countries in the western regions had I not seen their erotic art scrolls? If anything, I'd been hoping to get a look at what the Tang versions were like while I was here, just as I was thinking it still wasn't safe enough to make a run for it, and I'd better wait a bit longer. Shen Yao came to my rescue. The problem was, when he lifted the bed curtains, I was eating a snack with one hand while flipping through an erotic picture book I'd fished out from the room with the other, and my other leg was vigorously shaking the bed frame. Beside me lay the comatose, filth-smeared middle-aged creep, seeing the look on his face, like he'd seen a ghost. I couldn't help but deeply regret everything. If I'd known this would happen, I'd have thrown the dead pervert onto the floor and lain there myself amid the bed curtains, 3 parts smoldering desire and 7 parts shy hesitation, with 8 parts glistening tears in my bashful eyes, biting my lip demurely and calling out, "General Shen. General Shen." I managed in reality, forcing a smile that screamed innocence while shoving the spring picture under me with one hand. "Why don't you try coming in again?" 10. I stormed into Shun Manor and found Shen Yao standing beside a graceful young woman. She stood poised by the lotus-filled lake, a gossamer scarf fluttering in the breeze, her pomegranate red dress blazing like sunset. As she turned, slow and gentle, the veil lifted just enough to reveal exquisite, noble beauty beneath. For a moment, it was impossible to tell if the woman outshone the flowers, or if the scenery and the beauty simply belonged together. Shen Yao, clad all in silver robes embroidered at the hem with bamboo, stood with his hands clasped behind his back. The moment he saw me, he frowned and strode over. Shen Yao. I raised my head, mustering the brightest smile I could. Are you getting engaged? He said nothing, just seized my hand and tried to drag me toward the gate. The grip hurt badly. I fought with all my strength and pulled us to a halt. I asked again, Shen Yao, do you love me? If you do, I will personally go and apologize to the young lady you're meant to marry. That I'll go through fire and water, anything, as long as she agrees. I'm sorry. After a long, taut silence, those were the only 2 words he gave. Sorry for what? I stared into his eyes, searching for the truth, but he only clenched my wrist tighter, his eyes reddening, and said nothing. Shen Yao, I want to ask one last question. I looked at the small, pitiful reflection of myself in his eyes and felt a sudden ache. From the very start, did you look down on me, and on Yanxi? Enortia, his brows knitted even harder, as though he wanted to speak. But in the end he pressed his lips firmly shut. My wrist had gone numb. I had likely touched the bottom of despair, but I still thought I should correct any impression that I was just some unlearned barbarian. I know that in your great Tang, all noble youths yearn for daughters of the 5 surnames. Shen Yao, you are very fortunate, as many men could never secure a bride from the Fan Yonglu clan, yet now they are willing to join your family in marriage. I recalled the serene lotus fairy I had just seen and said with honesty, Lady Lu San is very beautiful, the most beautiful Han woman I have ever seen. You two are a perfect match, what I believe you Han call a union made in heaven. Shen Yao, from this moment on, I don't love you anymore. I steadied myself, wiped the tears from my face, blinked fiercely to force the rest back, and made the declaration with full solemnity. Shen Yao seemed paralyzed. He said nothing and refused to let me go. In the end, Xiao Wu and Xiao Lan rushed over and pulled me away. Trailing behind them was some official I didn't recognize, who announced that I had been galloping through the streets and must pay a heavy fine. Xiao Wu ransacked my belongings, dug out my hidden gold, and handed it to the stern-faced official. The moment the official strode off, thoroughly pleased, I snatched the empty little wooden box that had held the gold and flopped limply onto the bed. Xiao Wu, I've been dumped. I want to go home. Xiao Wu shrugged carelessly. Oh, I'm not done having fun in Chang'an. Go home by yourself. Long inertia. Someone like you won't run into any real trouble anyway. When I grabbed my whip and chased Xiao Wu across the entire courtyard, he panted indignantly. Not only have you lost love, you've lost your own family. No, Long Sugu, you're wrong. What I've lost is Xiaolan. 12. Xiao Wu wheeled his horse around, blocking the man in front of him. From the corner of my eye, I saw him look past Xiao Wu at me, still holding that white jade rabbit with ruby eyes. Giddy up. I did not slow that I knew Shun De would give him the matching jade dough, along with the wedding gift I had prepared for him, and the sash I treasured most, pressed at the bottom of the chest. I would never get to send. Behind me the noise grew clamorous, but I pretended not to hear that I did not die inside that day. The real blow came later, when Shen Yao's mother sought me out. She arranged to meet in a very beautiful garden. An elegant woman she was, and she did not like me. She told me Shen Yao was deeply in love with Miss Lu, the third lady of the Lu family. The year the Lus had refused Duke Shen's proposal, They had hinted they intended Miss Lu for a direct-line son of the Bowling Chui clan. Shen Yao was heartbroken and volunteered to garrison the western regions. Now that he had returned and won the heavenly Khan's favor, the Lu family had once again set their sights on him. The ducal manor was waiting for him to take over, and after marriage he would certainly never go back to the frontier. The last Lady Shun plucked a flower and handed it to me. She said Shen Yao felt he had wronged me, and she felt the same. Why? I asked, twisting the flower stem. Lady Shen smiled with an air of restrained grace. When a stray kitten or puppy picked up by the roadside adores you, gazing up at you day after day with those dewy, worshipful eyes, it's hard not to feel guilt and hesitation, especially when you must cast them aside once more. Enortia, don't go, don't go. The shouts behind me turned raw, almost frantic. Shen Yao was strange. He had no heart for me, yet he did things to make me misunderstand. Soon Duke Shun, it seemed, ordered the household guards to drag him away. That I never once looked back. The 8th princess of Yutian had lost her wager, and so had I. She lost a splendid jeweled crown, and I had to keep my word. 13. Shen Yao's gaze burned hot, as if to melt the gem on my forehead. Why are you marrying him? Because I want a D. Oh, I need a reason? I turned to leave, but he stepped in front of me. But the one you love is me. I ached to roll my eyes at him by the dozen. But a proper princess could not be so crude as, oh, I regarded him coolly. General Shen, I decided I no longer like you back in Chang'an. Did you think I was just talking, or playing hard to get? Shen Yao had probably never seen me with a straight face. I always smiled and teased around him, as if my affection was a well that would never run dry. He faltered for a moment, the light in his eyes dimming. Why couldn't you wait a little longer? Just 2 more days, and I could have given you the answer you wanted. I cut him off, gazing into the distance. Shen Yao, I'm getting married. Don't come to the wedding next month. I don't want a bull to be unhappy. He did not stop me again, but as I brushed past, he suddenly caught my hand and murmured, head bowed, Enortia, I won't let you marry anyone else. I gently pulled free and walked away, calm and composed, paying no heed to whatever he said next. After that, Shen Yao did not appear again. That I remained the carefree 4th princess of Yinxi, shoving all the wedding preparations onto my mother. When 5th brother found me, I was playing backgammon with my maids, whooping with abandon, his face livid. He dragged me aside and fumed. How did I get such a naive, sweet idiot for a sister? You're the naive, sweet idiot. Your whole family are naive, sweet idiots. I shot back reflexively, only to realize I'd tripped over my own tongue. Under his pitying, what an idiot stare, I shut my mouth. 5th brother looked ready to throttle me. Elder sister, a bull's sneaking around with some woman behind your back. I'm so furious I want to break off our friendship. Oh, is she pretty? Very pretty. Nice figure too, he recalled carefully, then sized me up with disdain. Way out of your league. But you're still a princess, and my sister. How could a bull do this to you? I patted the little fool on the shoulder. Did you see them holding hands? Or kissing? Probably just a distant relative having a chat. Well, no, I didn't, Xiao Wu admitted, his face reddening. Then he dashed off like the wind. That I guessed he'd already quarreled with a bull before coming, and was now rushing to apologize to his childhood friend. That I watched his back and sighed. Lately I'd been sighing an awful lot. I truly was a pitiful woman. A princess who had to cover for her fiancé before even marrying him. It was just too hard. The day after my meeting with Shen Yao, I hurried off to a bull to try to nurture some affection. Couldn't. Sibling affection turned into romance. Wasn't a cute puppy or a little wolf dog, secretly adoring you, delicious. Who knew that the moment I lifted a bull's chin for a soulful gaze, he burst out laughing, And after he'd rolled on the ground and finally recovered, I understood something else. Not only had a bull never secretly loved me, his heart already belonged to someone else. My fiancé had an unforgettable moonlight love he refused to forget. That was going a bit too far, but he still had to marry me. And I still would marry him. 14. On the eve of the wedding, I saw Shen Yao again. This time he wore Yinchi-style black riding clothes and a short blade, looking much sharper than before. But his manner, strolling in as if the place were empty, made me want to punch him, and I deeply regretted not having Father Doc the palace guards pay last time. That a bunch of good-for-nothings, utterly shiftless. Was the royal palace of Yinchi some place Shen Yao could waltz into at will? Huh. Fine. Apparently yes. And he'd even brought someone. The two of them swaggered into my residence. This person was Shinde. When Shen Yao wrapped me up like a rice dumpling and carried me off, I was stupefied. Could the man handing him the rope really be Shinde? Shinde could not meet my fiery glare that I was certain he was afraid I would tell Xiaolan how he'd aided and abetted a scoundrel. Shen Yao hoisted me over his shoulder and left the palace. I don't know where they took me. Only that I was jolted all the way to IT. Last he laid me on a bed, untied the dumpling ropes, and did not leave. His dry, cracked lips brushed my forehead in a light kiss. Propping himself on one hand at the edge of the bed, he fixed his eyes on me, unblended with the dark. "Enorsha," he said, "I think of you to madness." Through the night, a few sparks of starlight by the window fell perfectly in his eyes that I shifted slightly, lifted my face to his cheek, wrapped my arms around his broad, solid shoulders, and brushed his jaw with my nose. "Shen Yao, can I kiss you?" Without waiting for his reply, I pressed my lips to his. He let me roam over those lips for a few turns, and when I casually pried open his teeth, venturing deeper, he suddenly stiffened, leaned forward, one arm circling my waist, the other sliding up my spine to tangle in my hair. Deepening the kiss, it was too fierce that I yielded, breath growing short that I thought, "It's time." That he probably didn't know that among those I guarded against now, he was one. Shen Yao finally sensed something wrong, but he could no longer hold on. Even so, it took all my strength to push him down. I rolled off the bed, straightened my lapels. "Shen Yao, I told you, I don't like you. That I'm going back. If you keep forcing me, I'll have my father submit a formal petition to your heavenly Khan. Yinchi may be small, but I'll still demand justice." Just before he lost consciousness, Shen Yao's words came out labored. "Enorsha, don't go back." I paid him no mind. Pushing open the door, I found Shinde waiting outside in the small courtyard. That he showed no surprise, didn't stop me, just asked, "Princess, you truly wish to return?" I nodded. "I respect your decision. It's just that." A trace of melancholy crept into Shinde's voice. "Yao has borne a great deal to be with you. This time, you may never have a chance to be together again." I nodded again and left without hesitation. Before leaving, I told Shinde. The plain truth was that from the very start, Shen Yao and I never had a chance at love. It just took me far too long to see it. It'd be why the time I got back to the palace, Yinchi had already changed. 15. The king and queen were imprisoned. A bull was confined in the Grand General's mansion. Xiao Wu and Xiao Lu were missing. In truth, I had always known this day might come. I simply never dared, never wanted, to think too hard about it. Habitually painting everything in nicer colors, father and mother did not love each other. My elder sister's marriage to the Prince of Chotzi was nothing but politics. The unions of my elder brother and elder sister were only meant to anchor the long royal clan's power in Yanchi. As for the bet between father and me, that was probably the last kind dream he could grant his fourth child. Why a bull? Because a bull's father, General Shen, had been secretly stirring up ministers and nobles, plotting to tip all of Yinchi over to the Western Turks, year after year, more openly, more brazenly. But Yinchi was already a protectorate of the great Tang. Defection would bring Tang's tiger wolf armies to our gates. Father had seen the prosperity of Tang and the savagery of the Western Turks. Tang was mighty, but the Turks lurked right next door. Yinchi had barely 5,000 households. Its wall only 600 zhang that we could not afford to offend either side. Marrying a bull was meant to placate General Shen more. Importantly, Father and a bull stood together if all went to plan. The moment the Western Turks lost power, a bull would kill his own father, seize the army, and spare Yinchi from the heavenly Khan's wrath. Yes, the king played both sides, trading favors, seeking only to maintain a fragile balance between two great forces. You see, I have never been a proper princess. Nourished by my people's toil from birth, I should have devoted my whole life to Yinchi. But when faced with my father's guilt toward his older children, I pretended to be naive and innocent, stubbornly chasing a hopeless love. Shen Yao thought I was a fool who couldn't see the truth. That night in Chang'an, he tried to hint at it. What need did I have for his hints? Princess or sacrificial offering? The responsibilities I'd shirked for so long, it was time I shouldered them. This time, I could not run away. General Shen threatened me with my mother's life. Once I walked into their trap, I was separated from father and mother and held under lock and key. The only thing I didn't understand was why he had chosen this moment to act on the surface. Father had already extended enough goodwill. Then I saw a bull. The detained bull walked into the room where I was held. He glanced at me and said, "I'm sorry." "Why?" I demanded, eyes red. "A bull, your mother died at the hands of Yuji and your father. You swore revenge. You swore it. When little Wu and I saved you from Yuji, you said you would repay us no matter what. Betrayal. Is this your oath?" "Elder sister, she's come back. The Turks gave her back to me. For her sake, I would betray anyone." A bull could not meet my eyes. "I'm sorry, elder sister. She is the one I want to protect at any cost." "Then kill me for her sake. Don't call me elder sister. It disgusts me." After a long silence, a bull turned back, his face cold and hard, devoid of emotion. "Fourth princess, the Western Turks demand that you marry Prince Chu Li's younger brother, as a pledge of solidarity. Look at the bigger picture. If not you, it would have been the sixth princess. My father's original plan was to marry you to me and marry sixth princess to the Western Turks. Oh, I'm only wronging you." He paused, his voice suddenly distant. "Little Six still has a chance to be with her young General Chui." I closed my eyes, unable to accept what awaited her, and me, and all of Yinchi. 16. Fate's cruelty never fails to pile on when you're already crumbling. That was my truest reflection as I crouched in the grass, having just emptied my stomach, and with complicated feelings hollered at Shen Yao to tear off some cloth and wipe my mouth. That I knew Shen Yao was clever. But I never dreamed he could infiltrate the Western Turk honor guard sent to fetch me, much less become the head of my personal security. And so it happened that while this princess was answering nature's call by the roadside, he stood watch like a loyal guard dog not far off, making sure I didn't run. Don't ask why I didn't call a serving maid. Point one glance at that Turk maid squatting on the ground, picking at weeds, and my stomach cramped even more. Dark-faced, I climbed back into the carriage that I was certain he'd heard me break wind. Then footsteps. He followed me inside. A long blade pressed against the side of my neck. He must have a death wish. Don't drag me into it. I was genuinely questioning Shen Yao's brains. Die in plain sight of everyone. A move like that was pure provocation. Did he not value his life? I told them Her Highness looked suspicious and needed close surveillance, he said, utterly composed. Every breath fell against the crown of my hair. He gazed at me across a faint, ambiguous smile, those eyes holding me steady. Damn it, that expression did not suit his pretty boy face at all. You're fearless, are you? How about I just leave? I stewed in helpless fury, yet dared not act rashly. He seemed to thoroughly enjoy it, reaching out to pinch my cheek. So ugly. A few sparks of firelight from outside the window filtered through the night, catching in his eyes that I raised myself slightly, leaned my face close to his cheek, wrapped my arms around his broad, thick shoulders, and brushed my nose against his chin. Shen Yao, may I kiss you? Without waiting for his answer, I kissed him. I didn't know what Shen Yao was thinking. At first he let me linger on his lips for a few turns, but after I easily pried open his teeth and began to explore deeper, he suddenly exerted his strength, leaning forward and pressing down, one hand on my waist, the other sliding up my back to tangle in my hair, deepening the kiss. His kiss was too fierce. I passively endured it, gradually growing short of breath. I thought it was time. He probably didn't know that among those I was now on guard against, he was included. Shen Yao finally sensed something was wrong, but he could no longer support himself. Even so, I still had to exert great effort to push him down, roll off the bed, and straighten my clothes. Shen Yao, I told you, I don't like you. I'm going back. If you keep making things difficult for me, I will have no choice but to ask my father to deliver a diplomatic letter to the Tang Emperor. Yinshi may be small, but it will certainly demand justice. On the verge of unconsciousness, Shen Yao said with difficulty, Anisha, don't go back. I ignored him, pushed open the door, and found Shen Yao guarding just outside the small courtyard. He was neither surprised nor did he try to stop me. Only as I stepped over the threshold did he ask, Princess, do you truly mean to go back? I nodded. I respect your decision, but Shen Yao's tone was melancholy. Yao, in order to be with you, has also carried many burdens. Once you leave, you may never have another chance to stay together. I nodded again and left without hesitation. Before leaving, I told Shen Yao. Actually, Shen Yao and I, from the very beginning, could never have fallen in love. It's just that I understood that truth too late. By the time I returned to the palace, everything in Yinshi had changed. 15. The king and queen were imprisoned, Abu was detained at the general's mansion, and Little Fifth and Little Sixth were nowhere to be found. Actually, I had long known that such a day might come, but I preferred not to think about it, habitually prettifying everything to my father and mother didn't love each other. My elder sister marrying the Prince of Kucha was initially just a political alliance. The marriages of my second sister and third brother were merely to consolidate the Long clan's position in Yanchi. As for my wager with father, it was probably the last beautiful dream he could give his little fourth. Why Abu? Because his father, General E, had secretly been inciting key ministers and other members of the royal family to shift Yinshi's allegiance to the Western Turks. This past year his activities had grown increasingly blatant. Yet Yinshi was now a vassal of the Great Tang. Switching sides might provoke a Tang punitive expedition. Father had seen Tang's prosperity and also the ferocity of the Western Turks. Though Tang was powerful, the Western Turks were right next door. Yinshi had barely 5,000 households and only 50 to 60,000 people. It could not afford to offend either side. My marriage to Abu was meant as appeasement to General E. More importantly, Abu stood with my father if this plan succeeded. One day when the Western Turks weakened or collapsed, Abu would personally kill General E, seize military power, and thereby placate the Tang's wrath. Yes, father was hedging his bets, trying to strike a delicate balance for Yinchi's survival in these perilous times. See, I was never a qualified princess, born to be nurtured by my subjects. I should have dedicated my life to Yinchi. But when faced with my father's guilt over his previous children, I feigned innocence and naivety, filled heart and mind with selfish love. Shen Yao thought I didn't understand, going out of his way to alert me at the palace. But did I really need him to tell me? Princess or pawn? I must shoulder the responsibilities I had long been meant to bear. This time I wouldn't run, generally. Used my mother's life as leverage. After I walked into the trap, he separated me from my parents and imprisoned us apart. The only thing I couldn't fathom was why General Yi had launched a coup now. On the surface, father had shown him plenty of good faith, until I saw Abu that I thought the detained Abu walked in calmly, glanced down at me, and said, "I'm sorry." "Why?" I demanded with reddened eyes. "Abu, when your mother died at the hands of Yuji and your father, you swore you would avenge her. Have you forgotten? When Little Fifth and I rescued you from Yuji, you said you would repay us for life. Betrayal. Ah, betrayal. Is this your oath?" "Elder sister, she's back. The Turks are going to return her to me." Abu stood with his back to me. "I'm sorry, elder sister. She is the person I most want to protect. You can kill me, but don't call me elder sister. It disgusts me." After a long while, Abu finally turned to face me, his expression iron-hard and cold. "Fourth princess, the Turks want you to marry the younger brother of the great noble Kalug Chua, to cement friendly relations between the two states. Actually, you needn't be angry that if not you, it would have been sixth princess. According to my father's original plan, you would marry me, and sixth princess would marry into the Turks. Now only you are sacrificed. Sixth princess may still marry her childhood sweetheart, Hei Chui." I closed my eyes, unable to accept this fate. Mine and Yinchi's. 16. Fate is not at its cruelest. It only gets crueler, like now. Crouching in the bushes after just finishing my business, I called out to Shen Yao with mixed feelings, asking him to lend me some cloth to wipe. Yes, you read that right. Shen Yao. I already knew Shen Yao was formidable, but I never knew he was this formidable, able to infiltrate even the Western Turks' escort retinue and become my personal guard. So, when this princess had to relieve herself in the wild, he stood not far off, keeping watch to prevent me from escaping. That don't ask me why I didn't ask a maidservant. One glance at the Turk's servant woman cutting grass in the distance made my bottom hurt just thinking about it. With a dark face, I returned to the carriage. He must have heard me fart. As soon as I sat down, someone else climbed in. "What are you doing following me in? If you want to die, don't take me with you." I couldn't help doubting Shen Yao's intelligence, sitting down so brazenly. Wasn't he afraid someone would notice something off? I told them the princess was acting suspicious and required close surveillance. Shen Yao looked perfectly composed. He lowered his head, his breath brushing against my hair, a soft, gentle smile curling at his lips. This man. Even though I had given up on Shen Yao, I had to admit that his face was incredibly bewitching to unmarried maidens, like me. Then Shen Yao reached out, stroked my small braids, and squeezed me into the innermost corner. With a slight turn, he walled me in like a living barrier. My head spun, sensing his hands braced against the carriage walls, his gaze fixed intently on me, his tone utterly earnest. "Anisha, once this is over, to the ends of the earth, I will go with you." Shen Yao's nose drew closer, barely touching my brow. "Since last time in Yinchi City, we already consummated our marriage. You must take responsibility for me." Consummated marriage. Was he bullying my ignorance, trying to trick me? "Shen Yao, what on earth do you want?" I have never had feelings for Lu Sanyan. That was a non sequitur that I shrugged indifferently, turned away, and let out a long yawn. Before the yawn finished, my hand was seized. His palm was icy cold, his voice very low, deeper than I'd ever heard. I'm sorry Daiti took me this long to see things clearly. At first, I did intend to marry a young lady from a prominent family. After returning to Chang'an, I still couldn't make up my mind. Shen Yao suddenly looked up, his clear eyes misting with a trace of moisture, and said with the utmost seriousness, "Only after you left did I understand that I am fond of you. There is no one else for me." 17. Going to the Western Turks' royal court was truly somewhat arduous. Shen Yao flirted with me in every possible way every day, and those Turks, incredibly, never grew suspicious that a broken-down carriage stuffed with a solitary man and woman, dry tinder next to a blazing fire, and they weren't afraid of emotional entanglements igniting. Was I too experienced, or were the enemies too simple? Finally we arrived at the royal court that I was resettled in Kalug Chua's family tent, waiting to marry his younger brother, Kalug Ji. The Turks were more impatient than I. The very next day, I was hurriedly pulled into the bridal chamber. Outside, voices bubbled and seethed. I sat quietly on the woolen felt bed, waiting. Shen Yao didn't come that he said he liked me. Lied out a long while past, and I was already yawning repeatedly when Kalug Ji finally pushed open the door and entered that I had met Kalug Chua before. A capable, middle-aged man. I had assumed his only brother would be about the same age, perhaps a widower marrying me as a stepmother for his son. But the young man before me had bold brows and bright eyes, very upright and handsome. The type that girls of the Western region liked best. Had the Turks not gone too far, I might have happily married such a young man. Kalug Ji reeked of alcohol as he approached the bed. Then Shen Yao struck him on the back of the neck with a knife hand, and he collapsed to the ground. I had no idea how Shen Dai slipped and I watched, dumbfounded, as Shen Dai produced a small box of strange objects and tinkered before Shen Yao. Soon, Shen Yao's face changed to that of Kalug Ji, then tinkered again, and he reverted to Shen Yao's face. Heavens, was Shen Dai a god? Shen Dai gave a signal, then carried Kalug Ji out. Shen Yao immediately sat down beside me, tenderly declaring that we must eat and sleep together to avoid arousing suspicion. Yeah, right, that I didn't want to be forced to marry Kalug Ji. But I hadn't intended to harm him either. Shen Yao's actions did nothing but tie me definitively to his side, of no use to me, to my parents, or to Yinchi. Furious, I kicked Shen Yao hard off the bed. Who wants to board your pirate ship? To my utter surprise, I still ended up on Shen Yao's pirate ship and picked up several extra titles. Joint spy of the Great Tang and Yinchi, Shen Yao's contractual wife, his direct subordinate, and his bed-warming little sister. 18. As a spy, I actually had very little to do. Shen Yao, on the other hand, dressed up as Kalug Ji every day to gather intelligence, returning at night to record important information for Shen Dai to transmit. That it was also then that I learned Little Fifth and Little Sixth had escaped to the Anshi Protectorate and were likely now escorted by Protector Gua to a safer city within Tang territory. Once the war with the Turks ended, the Tang Emperor would send troops to escort them back to Yinchi. That I didn't quite understand. Tang was so powerful. Why wait? Shen Yao set down his brush, lightly tapped my forehead, and said that the Turks hadn't attacked Yinchi. Their control was exerted in the shadows. The To attack now would lack a justifiable cause. Fine. Han people were always troublesome, wanting a proper name for everything they did. I hugged my head and burrowed under the quilt, only to see Shen Yao lift a corner with a grin and lie down beside me. That he propped his head on one hand, watching me contentedly. Here we go again. To coordinate and act convincingly. Shen Yao and I had to produce some sounds every night. All because he had learned that Kalug was inseparable from women. I shifted onto my side, my back to him, and gave a few soft whimpers, but a long silence followed. That wasn't right. Weren't we supposed to perform together? No solos allowed. I craned my neck to look and found him, staring at me dazedly, a suspicious blush staining his face. Shen Yao. I tried to push against his chest, but he wrapped me into his arms in one swift motion. Shen Yao lowered his head, kissed my forehead, and then quickly blew out the lamp. Sleep. What's wrong with you? Don't move, Anisha. He held my waist, burying his head against my neck, his sigh encircling my ear. Even though you're right here, I still can't stop missing you. Can I kiss you? His voice was hoarse. 19. I was rather annoyed. Last night, Shen Yao had held me and kissed me endlessly. I wanted to push him away, but he brought up the time I stole a kiss from him in Chang'an, saying that the esteemed princess of Yinchi dared to act, but not to own up, refusing to make it up to him. That made a twisted sort of sense, but I had only stolen one kiss. Did it deserve such extended payback? And I sensed the guy was barely controlling his desires. That thing was a serious problem. In a fit of anger, I handed him over to Shanning, Kalug's second wife. This woman, stunning and sharp, was said to be of noble birth, yet she willingly became Kalug's second wife. Kalug genuinely doted on her. The gems on her belt were even larger and flashier than mine. His first wife stood on the third day after my wedding. She arrived with a gaggle of junior wives who hardly dared to lift their heads, launching into a passive-aggressive tirade, essentially telling me not to monopolize the husband during the honeymoon and interfere with Kalug's endeavors to produce heirs. I sipped my hot milk tea, smiling as I jabbed back. Oh, so when you had him all to yourself, did you manage to bear a son? Shanning stormed off indignantly, not showing an ounce of secondary wife humility. After that, she found ways to needle me daily. When she couldn't find Shen Yao, she'd send word, one day claiming she was ill and needed Kalug to check on her. The next, saying her distinguished family had visited and he must receive them. That I didn't want to drag Shen Yao into it. But he was simply too much. That I didn't even want to see him anymore. When Shanning cornered a drunk Shen Yao late one night, I just had him carried away. With Shen Yao out of the way, I lay in bed for ages, unable to sleep. Just as I was about to slip on my shoes and go gaze at the moon, I heard a dog bark. 3 short, 2 long. It was Shun Day's emergency signal. That I rushed out of the tent and followed the frantic Shen Day to another. Crawling inside, I saw Shanning lying on the ground unconscious on the other side. Shen Yao was in his true form, disheveled and tied to a wooden framework shaped like beast claws, his face flushed, and a bleeding gash on his forehead. No way. Had Shanning actually forced herself on Shen Yao? Guilt flooded me, until Shun Day's voice floated up from behind. Good thing I caught it in time. She didn't discover his real identity, but Yao was hit with an aphrodisiac, princess. Now he only has you. In ancient times, did such things really exist? I always thought it was just a legend. Shen Day's voice trailed off into the distance. That I froze. In aphrodisiac. Wait, aphrodisiac. 20. Right now, Shen Yao was lying on my bed, his face rosy like a spring peach, seductive eyes shimmering. He bit his lip in discomfort, murmuring sha-sha under his breath now and then. That traitor Shen Day dumped him back here and bolted, leaving me alone to deal with this mess. After long hesitation, I finally trudged over to the bed. That if not for me, Shen Yao wouldn't have almost been tainted. I in Yinchi. A man's virtue mattered too, you know? Shen Yao. Antidotes for this stuff in the western regions were hard to come by. I lay down flat next to him and whispered, "If it's really too much for you, I can help." His eyes were full of longing. Stray hairs soaked with sweat, he reached out and touched my face. "Then would you marry me?" I shook my head. "I just want to fix a mistake that I shouldn't have handed you over to Shanning when you were too drunk to defend yourself." The light in his gaze dimmed. He pulled his hand back and turned away from me. "Get out. I'll tough it out on my own. This is a brutal Yinshi aphrodisiac. If you don't, it'll ruin you." I struggled to turn him by the shoulder and saw his eyes were wet, his face full of grievance. When he noticed me looking, he started sobbing. That face was so kissable. Shen Yao shoved my hand away and turned his back again, sniffling. I thought about our secret mission, about Little Fifth and Little Sixth still stranded in Tang territory, about the king and queen and all of Yinshi waiting to be rescued. Rage flared, and I grabbed his collar and kissed him. "I'll marry you. Marry you." Shen Yao hurriedly covered his mouth. "Really?" I turned on my side, back toward him, and let out a few pitiful whimpers. Yet for a long while, there was no sound from behind me. That wasn't right. Hadn't we agreed to act together? No solo performances? I twisted to look, only to find him staring at me in a daze, a suspicious blush rising on his cheeks. "Shen Yao." I tried pushing his chest, but he scooped me into his arms. He leaned down and planted a kiss on my forehead, then swiftly blew out the lamp. "Sleep. What's wrong with you? Don't move, Anisha." He wrapped his arms around my waist, nestled his head into the crook of my neck, and sighed against my ear. "Even when you're right in front of me, why can't I stop missing you? Can I kiss you?" he asked, his voice hoarse. 19. I was a little angry. Last night, Shen Yao held me and kissed me for a long time that I'd meant to push him away, but he claimed that I'd stolen a kiss from him in Chang'an, and that a dignified princess of Yinshi ought to own up to her actions and make amends. That actually sounded reasonable, but it was only a quick peck. Did I really need to repay him for that long? Besides, it seemed this guy was having trouble restraining his passion. That thing of his kept poking me annoyingly. So, furious, I threw him at Shanning, Kalug's second wife. Shanning was a beautiful, sharp-tongued woman, said to be of noble birth herself, yet she'd willingly become Kalug's second wife, and he genuinely doted on her. The gems on her belt were bigger and more dazzling than mine as his first wife. On the third day of my wedding, she came with a gaggle of concubines who dared not raise their heads, and delivered a snide speech. Basically, I shouldn't monopolize our husband just because it was our wedding month, and thus hinder Kalug from fathering an heir. I held a steaming cup of milk tea, beamed, and retorted, "Oh, so when you were monopolizing him, did you manage to bear him a son?" Shanning swept out in a huff, utterly lacking the subservience expected of a junior wife. After that, she stirred up trouble every single day. If she couldn't find Shen Yao, she'd send word to me. One day pretending to be ill, begging Kalug to visit. Another day claiming some noble relative had arrived, requesting his presence. That I hadn't intended to drag Shen Yao into this, but he was being insufferable. I couldn't stand the sight of him. When Shanning came late at night to intercept a drunk Shen Yao, I simply had him carried off to her, without Shen Yao to tease me. I lay in bed and couldn't fall asleep for ages. Just as I was about to put on my shoes and go gaze at the moon, I heard a series of dog barks. 3 short, 2 long. It was Shunday's emergency signal that I hurried out of the tent and followed the anxious Shinday, ducking into another tent. There, I found Shanning unconscious on the ground. On the other side, Shen Yao, in his true appearance, was disheveled and bound to a cabinet, carved with animal legs, his face flushed, a cut bleeding on his forehead, In a way. Had Shanning forced herself on him? Guilt flooded me until Shun Day's voice drifted from behind. Luckily, I discovered it in time, so she didn't notice anything amiss. But Yao has been drugged with an aphrodisiac. Princess, only you can save him now. So that stuff really exists in ancient times? I always thought it was just a legend. Shen Day's voice seemed to fade, and I stood stunned. An aphrodisiac. Wait, an aphrodisiac. 20. Shen Yao was now lying on my bed, his face like a spring peach blossom, eyes seductive as silk, biting his lips in distress and murmuring "sha sha" under his breath. That traitor Shen Day had carried him back and then fled, leaving me alone to face this awkward mess. After a long hesitation, I finally resigned myself to approach the bed that if not for me, Shen Yao wouldn't have nearly been violated. After all, in Yinchi, a man's chastity is also precious. Shen Yao. Western aphrodisiacs are hard to shake off. I simply lay flat beside him and whispered, "If you're truly suffering, I can help you." Shen Yao's eyes shimmered with longing, strands of hair plastered to his forehead with sweat. He reached up to touch my face. "Then will you marry me?" I shook my head. "I just want to fix my mistake that I shouldn't have thrown you, drunk and defenseless, to Shanning." The light in his eyes dimmed. He withdrew his hand and turned away from me. "Get out, but I'll endure it myself. The brutal Yinchi aphrodisiac. If you don't, it'll ruin you." I struggled to turn him by the shoulder and saw his eyes were wet, his face full of grievance. When he noticed me looking, he started sobbing. That face was so kissable. Shen Yao shoved my hand away and turned his back again, sniffling that I thought about our secret mission, about Little Fifth and Little Six still stranded in Tang territory, about the king and queen and all of Yinchi waiting to be rescued. Rage flared, and I grabbed his collar and kissed him. "I'll marry you. Marry you." Shen Yao hastily covered his mouth. "Really? Really, really, really?" I deflated, heavy with regret. "You're so annoying." Before I could finish, he flipped me over, pinned me beneath him, and swallowed my words. His lips and hands wandered recklessly. My heart raced so fast that I forgot everything, wanting only to sink into this strange and trembling desire. In the end, Shen Yao still didn't go all the way. He said there had to be a proper wedding first. That I rolled my eyes. Who was it that spent all night teasing and provoking me? Now he's acting all prim and proper. Wait. No, seriously. If this stuff can be dealt with by one person alone, then what was I doing just now? Eyes shut, Shen Yao pulled my dazed self into his arms. I could feel the smooth skin of his arms and the scars across his chest. "Sha Sha, there's good news that we can leave here very soon." I shot up, delighted. Trying to calm my excitement, I whispered, "Really? That's wonderful." He half opened his eyes. "For bringing such good news, shouldn't Sha Sha show some gratitude?" "Huh. Oh, thank you." MMPH. He took advantage of me for a good while. While he was getting dressed, I buried my face in the blanket, fuming. "Shen Yao, you bastard." But I never imagined that this bastard, once he left, wouldn't return for days, allowing the furious Shanning to easily march in and take me captive. 21. I couldn't quite look Shanning in the eye anymore. Shen Yao had whispered to me that she and Kalug probably liked some rather adventurous activities. That was also why Shen Yao had ended up tied and drugged. If Kalug himself had been here, I'd have found him even harder to face. The turmoil of feelings churned inside me as I glanced at the high and mighty Shanning, that I didn't really register whether she was calling me a vixen or a cheap slut. I just thought how this girl, 2 years my junior, was already so wild. Long Anisha, I truly regret not killing you outright in Chang'an. Shanning's gorgeous face twisted with deep hatred. Otherwise, how could you still be alive to steal Kalug's heart? Knees numb from kneeling, I shifted my weight and looked up with earnest honesty. What if I told you nothing ever happened between Kalug and me? Would you believe that? You think I'd fall for your lies? You clung to Kalug day and night, wallowing in pleasure, and bewitched him so completely that he'd rather knock his head bloody than come to me. Actually, only night, not day. I corrected, then instantly regretted letting my mouth outrun my brain. Why add fuel to the fire? But Shanning was incensed. She ordered me dragged to a small room. Soon, a burly Turk man leered at me as he entered that I was certain. This Shanning was far stupider than me. Sure, my brain sometimes let words slip before thinking, but this woman was practically brain dead, framing me for adultery. And you set the trap in your own camp? And this man, he looked far worse than Kalug. If you're going to pick someone, at least find a decent-looking one. After all, would a princess married by alliance, the official wife of the noble Kalug clan, be interested in him simply because he's older or because he never bathes? But since I'd been washed like a hawk ever since arriving in Turk territory, I hadn't been able to stash many of my drugs. One used, one less. Better see if I could use my wits first. Esteemed warrior, I began slowly. Whatever the second wife promised you, I, the greatly favored first wife, will give you double. Ha ha ha. Princess, you and Yao are so active. Aren't you afraid of wearing yourselves out? Ha ha. The ruffian giggled slyly. Then his face suddenly shifted into an honest, simple one. Shen Yao. I was so embarrassed. What are you doing here? Shen Yao sat down beside me and patted my shoulder with satisfaction. I'm undercover too, except I belong to the Yuki clan, Shanning's tribe. Today they were sneaking around picking someone for a shady mission, so I came to see. And they actually chose me. Well, luckily it's me. So now what? I braced myself and asked. Shen Yao scratched his head and looked troubled. We just wait. I guess they'll definitely go get Yao now. TSK, I didn't expect harem intrigue among the Turks. Women are terrifying, ancient times or modern, east or west. But when he saw me glaring and mouthing, I'll tell little Lon, he immediately shut up like a chicken. After over an hour, Shen Yao, still disguised as Kalug, finally arrived. His face was ashen. He kicked the door open, scooped me up, and carried me back to our quarters. Shanning and a crowd followed, dragging Shen Yao along that he seemed so exhausted and frantic. Sweat beaded his forehead, and the rims of his eyes were red, with a hint of tears. Only I could see that. 22, Shanning was so angry she wept. With Shen Yao as the traitor witness, Shen Yao ignored her false accusations and tearful declarations of love. Instead, he sternly handed her over to Shen Yao's custody. Shen Yao nearly jumped up and fought him. Once everyone left, Yao wailed and cursed Shen Yao. I only told you to keep an eye on her and the Yuki clan. Stop them from causing more trouble. That I didn't say you had to do anything to her. Shen Yao's face was hard as he shoved his brother out, then swiftly returned to my side and buried my face against his chest, his voice extremely gentle. Sha, you can't stay any longer. I'll send you back tomorrow. Shen Yao, that time in Chang'an when I ran into trouble, it was Shanning who sent Turk spies to kidnap me and toss me into a brothel. Back then, Kalug was already thinking of an alliance marriage with Yanqi. Among my father's daughters, only little Six and I remained unwed. I and Yanqi, a younger sister, cannot marry before her elder sister. So I was the most likely candidate. She didn't want me marrying Kalug, so she plotted that whole thing. It might have even killed two birds with one stone. My purity ruined, my reputation destroyed. Kalug wouldn't want me. And since it happened on Tang's soil, it could also drive a wedge between Tang and Yanqi, maybe even persuade Yanqi to switch sides without a marriage alliance. She harmed me that I want to repay her in kind. Shen Yao's expression filled with pain. How does Shasha want to repay her? I won't stoop to her level. She loves Kalug more than anything to let her watch as Kalug falls in love with one woman after another. Shen Yao said nothing. The night was quiet. Blue incense smoke curled softly from the burner that a quarter-hour later, I let out a soft laugh. Ibu frowned, face flushed. What are you laughing at? I couldn't wait to rise that I took out my handkerchief and wiped my hands meticulously, stared at them, then stared harder, but they still felt unclean. Because, finally, today is the day I kill you. He barely got his hand to his sword hilt before he toppled over stiffly, blood seeping from every orifice that I crouched beside him, drew his sword, held it up and turned it over in my hands, then slowly thrust it into his heart. Watching his agonized face, I finally felt satisfied. Men who've just tasted the peak of power rarely die peacefully. Out of kindness, I explained to him. Yes. It was all an act. I spent over a year preparing for this day. You truly didn't die an unjust death. How could his death possibly be unjust? I once thought you loved that girl so deeply you'd betray your oath to your mother and the bond between us. But when you saw Tang's mighty army and the Turks' waning fortunes, you killed your father, seized his power, controlled the royal family, and again pledged loyalty to the great Tang. I gripped the hilt and slowly drove the blade all the way in. Ibu, you're nothing but a greedy coward. That poor girl, falsely accused as a Turkish spy, died at her lover's hands. I stood up and gazed down at him with a hint of pity. The more ruthless a man, the easier it is to achieve great things. Ibu was that kind of man. But he had a fatal flaw. He actually believed I had truly fallen in love with him. My acting was pretty good, wasn't it? From blazing hatred and resistance, to every flutter of attraction and inner struggle at each intimate moment, then the slow softening through pregnancy, until I completely surrendered, willing to bear your children and rule Yanxi. Together that I played it perfectly, didn't I? But who would love a man like you? Especially someone who indirectly drove her own father to his death. You never fully trusted me, but you let your guard down, drunk on power. That was the only opening I needed. Why now? Your trusted men have likely fallen to Xiao Wu and Xiao Lu's blades, joining you on the Yellow Springs. He'd been dead for a while. Why was I still talking to myself? I put away the military tally I'd retrieved and ordered Ibu's body dragged away. Moonlight poured through the window. For the first time in ages, I felt a lightness. Even though inside I felt hollowed at I turned away wearily. A handsome face appeared before me that I clicked my tongue and silently resolved to send the palace guards to Tang tomorrow for training. Before I could speak, Shen Yao pinned me to the wall that he tried to lean closer but stopped. I cupped my bulging belly and looked up at him feistily. Bullying a pregnant woman. Shen Yao, are you even a man? He stroked my cheek, his eyes red-rimmed. Shasha, you lied to me. I turned my head away. I am the ruler of a nation. Show some respect, General. He dropped his voice low. A marriage candidate doesn't need respect. What really matters is building affection quickly to cement peace between our peoples. Marriage, candidate. What was the Tang court playing at? Sending Shen Yao to be my consort. Suddenly I thought. The Tang are being rather stingy. They could have sent a few more. I swallowed nervously. I already have a husband. He's dead. Heavens. How long had he been watching? Perched on the rooftop or at the window? These Central Plains martial arts are truly miraculous. I must learn them. Tomorrow. No. Right now? I'll send a delegation immediately. I have a child. Shen Yao glanced down at my belly. I'll be his father. I frowned deeply. I'm not having a second one. He braced his hands against the wall. I accept that, willingly. My mind raced for a plausible excuse to reject him. Then it hit me. Wait, I'm the queen of Yinchi now. Since when do I need an excuse to refuse anyone? I puffed out my chest boldly, missing how Shen Yao's expression flickered. I won't. 24. I wanted to crawl into a hole, but I couldn't, because Shen Yao had just watched my belly rapidly deflate with a loud fart. And then he lunged at me, kissing me savagely that I couldn't push him off. My head spun. When I came to, I'd been moved to the bed. He kissed my face hard, my earlobe, my neck, then suddenly stopped and buried his face in my shoulder. Why didn't you wait for me? Why did you lie to me? I listened to his sobs. This was the second time Shen Yao had cried in front of me. His body bore many scars, some inches long, stark reminders of deep sword wounds that I'd seen them years ago, when I secretly watched him bathe. Back then, my heart ached until I wept. But Shen Dai told me Shen Yao never cried. No matter how much pain he endured, he never made a sound. My silk sleeve was getting soaked. I realized it was true. I really had broken his heart. After a long silence, I finally spoke calmly. Back then, Ibu had killed General Ai, seized control of my father, and was planning to install a puppet ruler. Unfortunately, my brothers and sisters were scattered far and wide, impossible to reach. With my father under heavy guard, the only way was through our agents planted among the Western Turks. They contacted me and ordered me back to the royal court to resist Ibu. Since Ibu wanted to curry favor with the Great Tang, my legitimate claim as heir, plus Xiao Wu and Xiao Lu speaking up in Chang'an, made him think twice about naming a new king. Father and I set up this drama together. He pretended to fear losing his throne and forced me to marry Ibu, promising to petition Tang for titles afterward, so the Ibu and Long families would rule Yinchi together. To sell it to Ibu, my father sank deeper into debauchery by the day, and secretly began poisoning himself to ensure the throne passed cleanly to me. In those final months, all I did was quarrel with my father. I accused him of dishonoring my mother and betraying his ministers and people. He would smash the palace and order me out, denouncing our bond. Yet the moment Ibu appeared, father would put on a genial face and dismiss it all as mere anger. Until he died, we were both acting. Only the bitter tears were real. That I let out a deep breath. Shen Yao, I couldn't wait for you. As for the lies, I'm sorry. I had no choice. He pressed his forehead to mine, eyes closed, murmuring, I'm the one who should apologize that I wasn't there when you needed me most. From now on, joy or sorrow, life or death, I'll be with you. I'm not going to lose you again. I closed my eyes too. My chest suddenly clamped tight. The dam broke, and tears poured. I don't want delayed love. 25. Shen Dai invited me for drinks. He pulled a red silk bundle from his lapel and tossed it to me. He said it was from a wedding earlier this year I hadn't attended. Xiao Lan had specially saved this celebratory candy and asked him to deliver it. She'd planned to come herself, but discovered she was pregnant just before setting off, so she couldn't make it. Shen Dai, talking about the child, grinned like a fool. He'd always been that way. Whenever he saw Xiao Lan, that uncontainable dopey joy lit up his eyes. I unwrapped the cloth to find 10 pieces of hard candy in red paper. One bite, sweet and crisp, melting into warmth right down to my core. I took a swallow of wine to go with it. What a life. Princess, one thing never sat right with me. Shen Dai grew serious. Why won't you accept a Yao? I knew it. He was here to plead Shen Yao's case. I don't know. Back then, when I finally gave up, I thought I'd drained every last bit of enthusiasm and courage. Couldn't bear to keep groveling, nursing an impossible hope. Besides, quite a few Tang people looked down on Yinchi. I leaned on the high platform railing, squinting at the bustling capital below. Beyond lay open country, a few scattered houses and campfires dotting the darkness. This was the land that birthed and raised me. My homeland, my cherished place, my sacred refuge. Shen Yao was one of them. Perhaps I could love humbly, but I couldn't bear not even being granted equal dignity. Later, I rapped my knuckles on the parapet. Too much has happened between us. We can't go back to the beginning. That I think the one he loved was the innocent, adorable Anisha, not the Yinchi princess with a heart full of schemes and lies, hands stained with blood. Everyone has their limitations, of the era, of class. A Yao is no exception. To be fair, choosing to follow his heart and pursue this relationship with you, princess, means shattering all his previous knowledge and ambitions to seek a fresh start. That choice is difficult. Even if it came late, he still chose you. From the moment he made that decision, he never retreated an inch. The respect you seek, I believe he has already given it through his actions. I turned to him, stunned. What do you mean? Going undercover among the Western Turks. He volunteered for it. All to secure your safety and Yinchi's peace. After you left, a Yao barely escaped with his life, only to return from the Turks at last. But I imagine he wouldn't have told you. To be worthy of you openly, he petitioned the emperor to renounce his title as heir and forfeit the Shun family's protection. Once the Yinchi matter is settled, he'll resign from office and never serve again. I asked him, giving up the fame and rank you've chased for years, will you regret it? He said nothing in this world is heavier than you. He's willing to wander the ends of the earth with you, see all the magnificent landscapes, or stay in Yinchi, if that's what you want. Princess. Shinde stepped closer. Love always moves forward, no one is stuck in a single phase. The him of the past loved the you of the past. The him of now loves the you of now. Whether feelings change isn't for others to guess. It's for the two of you to decide, together. I murmured, together to decide? Shinde nodded, his gaze drifting toward a corner of the palace. Princess, a Yao is waiting. The two of you should have a proper talk. A cool breeze brushed my face. Suddenly, I remembered a day at the Western Turkic court. Shen Yao had come back wounded but refused to tell me why. Worried, I lost my temper, but he just gently wiped away my tears and told me not to be afraid. Shasha, if one day they discover me and I die here, I'll probably only have an empty tomb. Then I'll trouble you. Bury half my grave in Yinchi, the other half in Great Tang. I was already sobbing. Why? Why bury half in our Yinchi? He pulled me into his arms, his firm chin resting against my forehead, his hand wiping my tears with utmost gentleness. I want to see the girl I love, and her beloved family and people, living well and in peace. He probably wouldn't have told you either. To be with you openly one day. He petitioned the emperor for a decree, giving up his title as heir and the protection of the Shen clan. Once the Yinchi matter is settled, he'll resign from office and never serve again. I asked him if he'd regret giving up what he'd pursued for years. He said nothing in this world outweighs you. He'd be willing to wander the world with you, to see all its beautiful landscapes, or to stay in Yinchi, whatever you like. Princess. Shinde stepped closer. Feelings always move forward with a person, one's feelings stay locked in one moment or one stage. Just like the old him loved the old you, and the him now loves the you now. Whether feelings change, no one else can decide that for the other. It takes both people saying so for it to count. Both people have to say so? I murmured. Shinde nodded and pointed to a corner of the palace grounds. Princess. A Yao is waiting for you. You two should talk. A cool breeze brushed my face. I suddenly remembered a day back in the Western Turkic king's court, when Shen Yao had come back wounded but refused to tell me why. Worried, I lost my temper, but he just gently wiped away my tears and told me not to be afraid. Sha, if one day they discover me and I die here, I'll probably only have an empty tomb. Then I'll trouble you. Bury half my grave in Yinchi, the other half in Great Tang. I was already sobbing. Why? Why bury half in our Yinchi? He pulled me into his arms, his firm chin resting against my forehead, his hand wiping my tears with utmost gentleness. I want to see the girl I love, and her beloved family and people, living well and in peace. I immediately turned and ran toward where Shen Yao had pointed. Shen Yao was indeed there. I rushed to him and threw my arms around his neck. He smelled good. The scent I'd loved for 5 years. Shen Yao, don't wait any longer. I love you. I've loved you for so long that I want to be with you right now. Hastily, I unwound my gem-studded belt and looped it around his neck, then stood on tiptoe and kissed his lips. Shen Yao held me tight. He kissed me back, gently. His lashes trembled, catching 2 teardrops. I slipped out of Yanchi. To be precise, I slipped out together with Shen Yao. Before leaving, I placed the crown and the military tally beside Little Wu's pillow. She'd been knocked out cold by Shen Yao. Sorry, Little Wu. I know you don't want to be king, but I truly couldn't go on. Anyway, Yinchi is recovering well, so I haven't let father down. Shen Yao and I are off to see the wider world and have a whole string of little monkeys. Shen Yao knew our plans. That he gave us a tiny tent, calling it an outdoor essential, warm and waterproof. Right now, Shen Yao and I are lying in the desert, poking our heads out to stargaze. After so many nights of stargazing, it's honestly getting a bit dull. I cast a sidelong glance at him, and while he was naming constellations, I quietly slipped off his belt. I swiftly straddled him, ready to take him thoroughly once and for all, since he keeps sparking the fire but never properly puts it out. Central Plains people are so fussy, annoying. Just as I leaned in to kiss him, Shen Yao suddenly got all shy, saying we should wait a few more days. As if I don't know him. He must have learned some new trick from Shen Yao to please me. Tricks, I'll take. But this jade-faced Han man, I want right now. I started peeling off his clothes. Wait for what? Are you incapable? Shen Yao froze for a long moment, then suddenly flipped us over, pinning me down, his breath hot against my ear. No more waiting. Let's test right now whether I'm capable. When I was panting, ready to receive him, Shen Yao stopped. He leaned down and asked hoarsely, Sha, will you marry me? Oh, yes. Why bring that up at a time like this? Shen Yao laughed, bright as the stars outside. But the stars belong to everyone. He belongs only to me. I love him. I am Shen Yao, a historical investigator. In my era, scientists have found a way to travel through space and time. My job is to travel back, verify historical facts, and compile objective historical records with nothing concealed or glossed over to prevent anyone from arbitrarily altering history or triggering butterfly effects that derail the original course of events. This technology is not open to the public. Only scientific workers and maintenance staff authorized by the Time-Space Administration can use it. There is also an unexplained flaw. Those who must undertake time travel often live short lives. For some, from the day they enter the transit channel, they don't survive even 3 years. But because of this, at the end of their careers and their lives, those who sign confidentiality agreements are offered a luxury compensation. You can make any wish. The Bureau will review and approve at its discretion. Most colleagues wish to leave their families a considerable fortune or resources. I only wanted to make one trip to the Tang dynasty outside my job duties. I thought my request would be flatly rejected. To my surprise, the Bureau approved it. even allowing me to bring some modern devices that I left. They warned me. If I didn't follow the rules, I would be terminated by maintenance personnel. The faintly glowing life monitoring chip on my wrist showed that I had less than a month to live, but that didn't matter. Once I traveled, time on my personal clock would slow to a crawl. The 10-day limit granted by the Bureau would equal roughly 10 years. Plenty of time. After arriving in the Tang Dynasty, by a series of coincidences, I took a foster mother, the older sister of the wife of Duke Shun, a founding meritorious official. Through her, I met the Duke's highly regarded eldest son. Shun Yao's plans didn't unfold in the orderly way I'd laid out in my diary. They were full of drama, but in the end, I achieved my as expected. Shen Yao was a handsome, steady young man that highborn, yet utterly free of pretension. Having an ancestor like this, I was very satisfied. Soon, because our temperaments matched and we faced several ordeals together, my ancestor and I became sworn blood brothers. When Yao left Chang'an and volunteered to garrison the western regions, his marriage prospects had just suffered a setback. The old aristocratic Liu clan looked down on merit-based martial families of humble origins. They'd rather marry their daughter to a self-important younger son of the Bowling Chui clan than give her to the capable Duke Shun's eldest son. That failed courtship deeply wounded the young man's pride and spirit. With my occupational habits kicking in, I was also eager to see the historical Western region kingdoms with my own eyes, so I went with him. Later, I realized it was the best decision of my entire life, because I met Lan Qima, my Xiao Lan. To be honest, while I was struck by Xiao Lan's beauty the first time I saw her, falling in love with her was something that grew over time. Back then, she accompanied Princess Anasha of Yinchi, faithfully waiting outside the general's residence for a glimpse of a Yao. The little princess was probably only 16 or 17, dressed in an exotic red robe, a delicate string of bright sapphires on her brow, her hair in tiny braids. She'd sit on the stone steps at the gate, large eyes fixed, hopefully on the courtyard, her expression radiant. Occasionally, she'd hum a tune that I couldn't understand it, but I had an ancient minority language translator. Daiti was a love song. Gleefully, I intercepted a Yao as he snuck back via the back gate and told him the words of that bold Yinchi love song. Expecting to see him blush, that a Yao just shot me a glance and walked off. Cool and indifferent, that my ancestor is good in every way. Just too dulled and no fun at all. The little princess often journeyed from Yinchi to the Anchi Protectorate under the stars, switching from camels to horses, traveling half a month across deserts and Gobi. She'd bring all kinds of gifts and local specialties for a Yao, sometimes even playing the billy flute outside the gate for half a day. Amid those lingering, passionate, exotic melodies, I thought, any man would be moved by such devotion. Yet a Yao remained unmoved, always avoiding her and refusing every gift. If I hadn't known he'd once tried to marry Liu Sanyang, I'd almost suspect he preferred men, and wonder whether I needed to keep a safe distance. The little princess didn't get discouraged to win her beloved. She kept at it for a full 3 years. That, of course, my Xiao Lan, that silly girl, was exactly like her princess. Once she set her sights on someone, she didn't hesitate. By then I could hardly contain my feelings and was still mulling over whether to confess. Who knew Xiao Lan would just blurt it out in front of all the guards in the residence, her eyes blazing, face full of expectation, as if saying, "You're not allowed to say no." And so, she got me. We got along wonderfully. But Xiao Lan refused to stay put. She insisted on sharing her princess's joys and hardships, making hard trips back and forth between the two places. I had to endure the loneliness of a long-distance relationship. and every time I thought of the two girls trekking such distances, I could only glare resentfully at Yao's deadpan face. If I hadn't cared about our brotherhood, I might have knocked him out with a hammer, delivered him to the little princess, and happily scooped up Xiaolon. Brothers are like clothes. Wives are your ribs, after all. Just before I completely lost my mind and became a man who prizes beauty over friendship, Xiaolon finally agreed to come back with me. I was itching to propose and determined to make her stay this time. The reason my girlfriend finally relented was that the little princess, in her pursuit of Shen Yao, had resolved to come to the Great Tang with the tribute envoys that a Yao couldn't avoid her anymore. The little princess often teased him till he bristled, but he could do nothing. Still, I could tell that stubborn iceberg of his was slowly melting. But I didn't share this good news with Xiaolon, because I knew this story wouldn't have a happy ending. After arriving in Chang'an, Xiaolon accepted my proposal at the same time. The little princess and Yao broke up completely. Xiaolon and I went to see her off. Her eyes were swollen and bloodshot, as if she'd been crying all night. But she only smiled and said the past was past, and there was nothing left to regret. Xiaolon buried her face in my chest, wiping tears. She said the little princess would return home this time and marry a powerful minister, as ordered by the king of Yanxi. I hope Anisha finds happiness. I gently patted her back, my voice a little hollow. The day the little princess left, I went to find Yao at the training ground. I saw his breathing unsteady, his swordplay disordered, his brow clouded with an undissolvable confusion and bitterness. Yao, are you truly sure? This parting may mean you and Anisha will never meet again. Shen Yao sheathed his sword and turned away, so I could no longer see his expression. You're thinking too much. I fell silent. I'd rather be overthinking than right. Within less than a year, I heard that Karashar had fallen into turmoil. The king was imprisoned, and his fourth princess was forcibly married off to a Western Turkic lord as a political bride, a son of the Chu Luchua clan, a hawkish minister, an old enemy of the Tang. The fifth prince and the fourth princess barely escaped the coup and fled to seek aid from the Tang court. The emperor agreed to war, and Yao was personally appointed a vice general. Meanwhile, the renewed marriage negotiations between the Shun and Lu families, which had just begun to look hopeful, were shelved. When I saw Yao, he was polishing his sword. His eyes were bloodshot, his hand unsteady, and he did not speak a word. Yao, I'll come with you. After a long silence, he shook his head. No, this is a real battlefield, perilous beyond measure. I'll stay with the supply convoy. That I won't be a burden. I tried to sound casual. It's not even for you. Xiaolon asked me to go. She's worried about Anisha. Yao's hand stilled on the blade. Since the little princess had left, my brother and I had silently agreed never to mention her, that I did not want to cause him pain. I suspected he was afraid that if he spoke of her, he would lose control of his own heart. Another year passed before the Tang army finally launched its campaign against the Western Turks. That battle ended in a decisive victory. On the day, we stormed the Western Turkic Khan's main tent and planted our banners there. The last threat to the Tang's western frontier was erased. The camp erupted in deafening cheers, waves of exultation rolling through the troops. But Yao was nowhere to be found. I searched for a long time before I found him inside Chu Lu Ji's tent. He was kneeling, half-crouched, his long sword driven deep into the dirt. He lifted his eyes to me, but they were lost, glistening at the corners, his hands slick with blood, his face was ashen, and his lips parted several times as though to speak. But no sound came. That I walked past him with heavy steps and did not offer my hand. Some things a man must endure alone. If he can bear it, the path ahead will open bright. If he cannot, It becomes a knot that can never be undone, a wound he can never forget, from which he will suffer for the rest of his days. A Yao. I recalled why I had come, and my resolve failed. That Hitian jade rabbit the princess gave you. I hid it inside the pillow you never use. His grip on the blade tightened further, letting the sharp edge test his will. After we returned to Chang'an, I told Xiaolan a story that I in it. The little princess she adored found eternal freedom and true love. Xiaolan's eyes shone. She clutched the gem-inlaid beads I had begged from the new king of Karashar as a gift, treasures that once belonged to the princess. Her face was flushed with tears, both joyful and aching. I knew it. The princess is so wonderful. Shen Yao would live to regret it. I'm so glad it ended well. But where did the princess truly go? Will she ever come see me? I held her tight. Of course she will. But right now she and a Yao are so carried away with their adventures that it may take a while. Yet I could not help picturing a Yao, a solitary, windswept figure standing at the edge of the desert beneath an age-worn fortress tower. My heart ached, and I pulled Xiaolan even closer. My time is short that I cannot give you a child. Xiaolan, truly, do you not regret this? Xiaolan pouted, defiant. Don't say that. I told the princess we are expecting a child soon, and she was very happy, I said softly, forcing down my jealousy. After I am gone in a few years, find a good man, remarry, and have a child, so the princess won't accuse me of lying. Xiaolan let out an indignant huff and turned her head away toward the night sky beyond the window, likely thinking of her princess. She would never learn the truth. The fourth princess of Karashar made her final stand with brutal, unyielding defiance on the eve of the great battle. She assassinated Chu Luchua, and then the husband who had grown accustomed to abusing her slit her throat. She collapsed to the ground, a spreading pool of crimson staining the white robes of the dead. A Yao never even saw the princess's remains. The grief-stricken soldiers of Karashar had already carried their princess home before he could reach her. That farewell in Chang'an was the final goodbye. Xiaolan will never know the truth, because the other protagonist of this story will remain on the western frontier, keeping guard until he, too, is buried there. Once I had coaxed Xiaolan to sleep, I opened my diary. While recording the true events of the Tang campaign against the Western Turks, my brush halted. I remembered my middle school years, when a Tang dynasty general's tomb was excavated in the northwest. The humble chamber was bare, just a skeleton, a suit of armor, a long sword, and a top-grade Hitian white jade rabbit inlaid with rubies, no larger than a half-clenched fist, resting beside him. I stared at the television, listening as the narrator recounted the tomb owner's life, then shouted to my parents. Mom, Dad, come quick. This man is our ancestor. I saw his name in the old clan genealogy back home. On the Shun clan's lineage scrolls, Shen Yao stood out as the most illustrious name of the second generation, a solitary figure, recorded without wife or children at a 14-year-old. I could not help but wonder, why did he go to the northwest? Why would a high-ranking general be buried with nothing but a white jade rabbit? Those first questions set me on the path toward a career I came to love with all my heart. And now I have chosen to return, to find the answer. The night is deep. I rub my tired brow, climb onto the bed, and fold my wife into my arms. I think to myself, I have no regrets. My life has been full. This world has been generous.